With your permission, I think I'll go ahead and get a little head start on here. They're still clearing, and I understand there are a few more desserts coming. I'll talk about that. I want to welcome you all to the annual meeting of members of the Michigan Supreme Court Historical Society, and to this, our 11th annual luncheon. Your attendance today and your continued interest in and support of the Society are greatly appreciated. 2002 marks the 14th year of the Society's activities, which relate to the history of the Michigan Supreme Court. So if you will, let me take just a moment to report on the recent activities of the Society. Our membership base remains strong, and we appreciate those of you here today who have contributed to our cause. Those of you who are not members of the Society are certainly encouraged to join. Membership information is available at your table, as well as the registration table. As many of you perhaps already know from reading the year in review issue of Society Update, the Society has had another busy year and is looking forward to the biggest event ever in 2002. Detroit celebrated its 300th birthday last July 24th, and on October 9th, the Society, with the help of former Justice and Detroit Mayor Dennis Archer, assisted the Michigan Supreme Court to recognize that Detroit milestone in a special session of the court held at Wayne State University. And then in November, the State Supreme Court held another special session, this time to honor and receive the portrait of former Justice Patricia J. Boyle. Portrait committees of the association are active in soliciting contributions for commissioning portraits of former Chief Justices Mallet, Brickley, and Weaver, and tax-deductible contributions are being received by the Society. The portraits of Justices Neil E. Reed and Edward M. Sharp were completed and have now been presented to the court. We now have, and they're all on CD-ROM and available on the World Wide Web, we have the portrait of nearly every Michigan Supreme Court Justice who completed their service on the court in the 20th century. We have published and distributed the 1999 Coleman Interns Research in a booklet entitled A Brief History of the Michigan Supreme Court. There are other things, but these are the highlights, and of course the best is yet to be. I refer to the new Michigan Supreme Court Hall of Justice, which the Chief Justice today will tell us is on schedule, on budget, and on our minds. If you're assigned for oral argument on October 8th next, don't go to the second floor of the G. Menno Williams Law Building, because the Supreme Court will be sitting on the 6th floor of the new Hall of Justice. The move and the date are definite. But even if you don't have a case before the court, you'll be welcome to celebrate the opening of court on Tuesday, October 8th, 2002. Save the date, details will follow. The State Bar of Michigan and the Michigan Supreme Court Historical Society are combining. They're combining to sponsor the historic opening of the Michigan Hall of Justice and its Learning Center, with an elegant reception at the Hall of Justice on Saturday, October 12th, 2002. Opening the court October 8th, Tuesday, big dinner Saturday night, October 12th. Henceforth, you'll be flooded, no doubt, with information about this once-in-a-lifetime judges and lawyers event. The directors of the Society met this morning. They diligently applied themselves to dispatch the business of a full agenda before coming to this annual luncheon. And I call on them now to rise and receive your recognition and thanks for their efforts for the Society. Directors? There are a number of judges in the audience, but one thing that we sometimes do that others don't is we don't introduce them. We thank them for coming, but we do introduce former justices, and I'd like to do that now. Chief Justice Dorothy Comstock Riley is sitting down there. Former Justice Charles Levin. All the way from Grand Rapids, Justice Bob Griffin and Marge. When I introduced the directors of the society a moment ago, one of the directors who rose was Roger F. Lane, who now completes his service on the board at this meeting. Roger was one of the original directors and has served continuously since the society was organized. He proposed the oral history project of the society, and he volunteered countless hours of his time to research the background and the written opinions of former justices that he was going to interview. At its meeting this morning, the Board of Directors unanimously passed a resolution of appreciation, which I have the pleasure of presenting to Roger at this time. Roger, will you come forward? This is the resolution which was unanimously adopted by the board on April 8th, and it goes into great detail, commending Roger for his long service, 11 years, for all of his volunteer work on the board. Recipients of the board don't get to speak either. Another very special member of the board left us suddenly last December with the passing of Thomas A. McNish. Tom was Vice President Corporate Secretary of CMS Energy Company in Jackson, Michigan at the time of his death. But many of you recall Tom from his days here in Detroit with the SEC, the NBD Trust Department, and as president of the Detroit chapter of the Federal Bar Association. Tom's interest in the history of law prompted his selection to serve on the board of the society, which he did with distinction such that the board of directors this morning, likewise, unanimously passed a resolution of appreciation, which I would now like to present to two of Tom's co-workers and representatives of CMS Energy Corporation, Phil Pickle and Don Forsberg. This annual luncheon is always in honor of the Michigan Supreme Court, and they honor us with their attendance. To bring you greetings from the court and to introduce our colleagues, I call upon the Chief Justice, Maura Farr.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm pleased to be here this afternoon to welcome all of you to this annual luncheon, to introduce my colleagues, to speak for a few moments about the events that are about to transpire here. First of all, I would like to take a moment to introduce my colleagues. The lights are very bright here, so I'm going to try to locate you in the audience and ask you to stand. Mike Kavanaugh, first in order of seniority. Mike, are you here? He was here. All right, very well. Betty Weaver. Betty, will you stand and be recognized? Clifford Taylor. And Bob Young was here. The society met this morning in the room next to the Supreme Court's conference, and I understood from someone that we interrupted them repeatedly by raucous laughter. And they could hear my voice trying to get control over the conference, which is fairly typical. I think Betty can attest to that with me. But I am very happy to tell you that I finally caught Bob Young in a spelling error today. And he has a bigger vocabulary than any human being I have yet met. But he misspelled boulderize, and I was just thrilled by that. And he's not here to hear me tease him. And Steve Markman is here as well. Steve. I'd like to also welcome, I see that retired Justice and former Detroit Mayor Dennis Archer has just arrived, and we welcome you. And Justice Kelly had to be out of town today, so she sends her greetings to all of you. Let me, on behalf of the court, join the society in giving congratulations to Governor Engler for receiving this first award. This has been a week of awards, and last Sunday, for me personally, began this week of awards with a posthumous award that my father received in Cleveland, Ohio, for his contributions as a leader in medicine. And I thought that what was said then about leadership, is particularly about my dad as a leader, this little story that the presenter gave, is particularly apt to describe John Engler and what I understand of his leadership. I've had the huge privilege over the last 2 years as Chief Justice to work with this governor on a number of projects of interest to both of our branches. And I can tell you that he brings huge energy. You may not always agree with John Engler. You may find him very controversial. He is a man who is courageous, and he is a man of high energy. And I think this story about leadership describes who I think he is. A leader. I went on a search to become a leader. I searched high and low. I spoke with authority. People listened, but alas, there was one who was wiser than I, and they followed that individual. I sought to inspire confidence, but the crowd responded, "Why should I trust you?" I postured, and I assumed the look of leadership with a countenance that flowed with confidence and pride. But many passed me by and never noticed my air of elegance. I ran ahead of the others, pointed the way to new heights. I demonstrated that I knew the route to greatness. And then I looked back, and I was alone. "What shall I do?" I queried. "I've tried hard and used all that I know." And I sat down and pondered long. And then I listened to the voices around me, and I heard what the group was trying to accomplish. I rolled up my sleeves and joined in the work. As we worked, I asked, "Are we all together in what we want to do and how to get the job done?" And we thought together, and we fought together. And we struggled towards our goal. I found myself encouraging the faint-hearted. I sought the ideas of those too shy to speak out. I praised those who worked hard. When our task was completed, one of the group turned to me and said, "This would not have been done but for your leadership." At first I said, I didn't lead. I just worked with the rest. And then I understood, leadership is not a goal. It's a way to reaching a goal. I lead best when I help others to go where they've decided to go. I lead best when I help others to use themselves creatively. I lead best when I forget about myself as a leader and focus on my group, their needs, and their goals. To lead is to serve, to give, to achieve together. And I think this is a beautiful description of leadership, and I commend you, John Engler, for the way that you've led Michigan, and I particularly thank you, Governor, for what you've done with regard to the Hall of Justice. There are a lot of Chief Justices who preceded me here on this stage who worked hard to get a Hall of Justice built. There's a history of dashed hopes in Michigan since the founding of our state to have a courthouse, and we are about to have one, and that's thanks to you. So we're grateful for that. I want to just record a little bit of our history in the past 40 years or so that lets you know what has gone on in this state. Back in 1967, Chief Justice John Defmers presided at the presentation of a portrait of Justice George E. Bushnell. At that time, the Supreme Court presided in the same room where it had been for almost 90 years, in the Capitol building. And in accepting the portrait, Justice Defmers expressed the hope, and I quote, that the long-continued assurances from some quarters that one day this court will be housed in a new court building may before long come true. 3 years later, the Supreme Court was still in the Capitol building, and the court had a new Chief Justice, the young Thomas Brennan. And on that day, he presided at the closing of the courtroom. The Supreme Court was about to move to the G. Menon Williams building. One of the speakers was Senator Thomas E. Swigert. He brought with him the good wishes of the legislature and also the hope that the Williams building would only be a temporary headquarters for the court. 3 decades later, the next moment is still in the future. The next moment is going to be the dedication of the new Hall of Justice as it rises on facing the Capitol on Martin Luther King Boulevard. If you've been to Lansing, I hope you take a chance to look at the G. Minnis Williams building. It's been a long, arduous trip to get there. Let me say a word about buildings, because I think after September 11th, I understand better the impetus of people to have a permanent institution. Before September 11th, I would say to various audiences that the court was a permanent institution. After September 11th, I've learned my lesson. The court is not a permanent institution. What is permanent is courage in the hearts and minds of men and women who let these generations continue and proceed into the future. But the courthouse is a testament. It is the spirit of justice. It is a testament to ordered liberty in our state. So we're very proud of this new building that is arising. It is an institution that represents courage. It represents the spirit of justice. So I welcome all of you to our dedication on October 8th, to our dinner on October 12th. I hope you'll join us in celebrating the symbol that the Hall of Justice is. And I thank you all and welcome you again on behalf of the court.
Call your attention now to the program on your table. On the back and in the center, you'll see our logo. That's the logo of the Michigan Supreme Court Historical Society. Let me tell you how it came about. When this society was formed, we needed a letterhead, and I contacted Florida, Illinois, Missouri, and others for copies of their correspondence. They all came back with replicas of their Supreme Court building as their letterhead logos. We had none. So we asked the Center, now the College for Creative Studies, to conduct a competition to design a logo for us, with the secret hope that someday it could be replaced. Now if you'll open your program at the very bottom, you'll see our new logo, which shows the new Michigan Supreme Court Hall of Justice. On the back of that program, you'll see a picture, and it's the rededication of the old Supreme Court chambers on April 28, 1988. In April of 1988, John Engler was Majority Leader of the Michigan State Senate. Bethany Comstock Riley was serving as Chief Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court. Michigan Supreme Court Historical Society had just been formed, and one of its first activities was the rededication of the old Supreme Court chambers in the Capitol building, where the Supreme Court had sat until 1970, when it moved then to its present location of the G. Minnis Williams Law Building. On that occasion, I remember it well, as I'm in the picture, I remember that the Chief Justice lamented that Michigan was one of the few states that didn't have a Supreme Court building. Senator Engler said, quote, "Perhaps someday we can change that." That day will be October 8, 2002, when Governor Engler, the legislature, and the Supreme Court will dedicate the newly constructed Hall of Justice at the end of the mall opposite the Capitol. The Society has created the Legal History Award, and it's to be presented periodically to commend one or more of Michigan's citizens for their ongoing support of and interest in Michigan's legal heritage. The award may be given in recognition of a single significant contribution to the preservation of Michigan's legal history, or to honor an individual's long-term support of the efforts of the Society and the preservation of history of the court. An individual may also be recognized for significant contributions to Michigan's legal heritage and as a historic figure in Michigan's legal system. Individuals will be honored for their unselfish, outstanding, and unique service to and on behalf of Michigan Supreme Court Historical Society, the legal profession, as well as the public. The award signifies unusual and extraordinary help and assistance to the society and pursuit of the preservation of Michigan Supreme Court history, as well as significant contributions to the Michigan judicial system. During his 11 years as governor, John Engler has appointed a significant number of Michigan judges, 3 to the Supreme Court, 15 to the Court of Appeals, 60 to the circuit courts, 5 to recorders courts, 30 to probate courts, 70 to district courts. If you're counting, the total is 183 judicial appointments. But make no mistake about it, the single most significant contribution to Michigan's legal history and his legacy to the judicial branch of Michigan government is his steadfast support for the building of Michigan's new Hall of Justice. In recognition of his efforts in promoting the building of the Hall of Justice, the Society is pleased to present the first ever Legal History Award to Governor John Engler. It's not a plaque, it's not a gavel. It's a book. It's a leather-bound book from Easton Press. It's entitled The Oxford Companion to the Supreme Court of the United States. It's 1,032 pages, a lot of reading in here. But it's a great, great history about the justices of the Supreme Court and about all the important cases. As I'm figuring through it, 14th Amendment, you know, the whole thing. And it really is a great book, and we present it to him because it's appropriate as a symbol of the Legal History Award that it should go to John Engler from the Michigan Supreme Court Historical Society. So I want to present that to the governor. Now, that's U.S. So somebody says, well, wait a minute, he's the governor of Michigan. What about Michigan? Michigan's got some justices too. So if you remember, we had a book with the first 100 justices, bios and pictures, and a whole bunch of indexes about the Michigan reports, and many of you have copies of it. And we thought that was the very best thing that we could present as a symbol of the Legal History Award for Michigan. So we went to our favorite binder, and we had it bound up in hardcover, and it says, Michigan Supreme Court Legal History Reference Guide, Legal History Award, presented to Governor John Engler, April 18, 2002, as the companion volume for more reading, Governor.
Well, thank you very much, Wally. Those are beautiful books, and I'll treasure them, and I can assure you that they won't end up over at John King's bookstore either, where I've been able to pick up copies of the minutes of the Constitutional Convention and things like that, but I'll treasure them and have to leave some instructions for the daughters, you know, for years from now. Those are beautiful. 1,032 pages, you know, perfect for, take that to Tiger games the way they've been playing. I know we have some Tiger fans here, and so I'll try to keep that in mind. 2 o'clock, all right. Wally, you give me some pretty strict instructions. But I look out at the folks in this room, and the principles, the achievements, the leadership you represent throughout the Michigan judiciary, it really does make it an honor beyond words to describe. You know, to receive this from the society, its first Legal History Award. Those are beautiful. I will treasure them, and I treasure the sentiments behind them. An ancient philosopher said it pretty well, sort of captures my sentiments. Here's what he said: most people are content with the applause of the rich and powerful, the beautiful and famous. I'm satisfied to earn the esteem of the virtuous and wise. And so, for all the wise and virtuous ones here, thank you very, very much. It is a great honor, and I'm grateful. As I said, I'll be brief. Tigers going for 3 in a row across the street, you know, behind us here. We've got a winning streak. I don't want to get in the way of that. You know, when I think virtuous and wise, though, I did your General Kelly said earlier that technically this is not the first legal history award ever given. Frank indicated to me that he was a recipient of the first legal history award when the old Supreme Court chambers in the Capitol were dedicated. And you know, you got that picture, and I was thinking back and I was remembering the ceremony that took place. I remember the plaque was April of 1988, and thinking about that day, because I was the Senate leader at the time. Frank said, oh no, not that ceremony, I'm talking about the original dedication back in 1879. We're looking forward, I think, with great anticipation. I must say, most days when my morning usually starts, I drop the girls off at their Montessori schools on St. Joseph Street in Lansing, and then I come to the Capitol. And I usually come down the street, get a chance to see the Hall of Justice, so I've been sort of watching the construction all the way along. I'm always commenting. I mean, right now, this week, they're starting to move some dirt, get a little landscaping done. It's really looking terrific, but I just can't wait till it does open, and you're going to see, in addition to the Hall of Justice, of course, you may not have seen the Michigan-Vietnam Veterans Memorial, which is in front, from standing at the front steps of the Hall of Justice off to the right, and that's a beautiful spot. And the kind of landscaping that we're going to do, and then down through the mall, we hope to have a sort of unobstructed view right straight down through that mall, and a beautiful kind of a boulevard for a pedestrian walkway. So it's going to be pretty nice. I generally, in my current job, try to stay out of the courthouse and stay away as far as I can, but I certainly will be there on October the 8th. I'm looking forward to it. And then on October 12th, which is my birthday, I understand that we're throwing a party, and so I'm going to try to make that as well. It is going to be special. And it's so appropriate. When Dorothy Riley was Chief Justice, she talked a lot about the Hall of Justice. She was an early advocate, a passionate advocate, and she gave me some of the history, of course, of how many others had been in pursuit of getting this done. And so I think it's just great that it's coming to fruition. And I also think what's pretty terrific is what Wally and Dorothy and all the members of this society have been doing the past 14 years. It really is an act of civic virtue, and you're to be congratulated. You're just building up this patrimony of sound historic principles and, I think, correct judicial thinking. There's no doubt in my mind that the society complements the work of our Michigan Supreme Court. Our current court's work, I think, is simply stellar. It's one of the things, the greatest things to be proud of in a state that's just full of great things to be proud of. On Friday of last week, one of my assistants was talking to Gene Myers, president of the Federalist Society in Washington, D.C., and he just flat out said that the Michigan Supreme Court, bar none, is the best state court in America. And I believe that. In decision after decision after decision, our High Court adheres to legal principles consistent with the founders' understanding of the role of the judiciary in our constitutional republic. Wally was kind enough to recall, and actually I didn't have an up-to-date number, but I think of all of the judicial appointments that a governor's privileged to make in a tenure in office, and since mine's stretched down now, some 11 years and almost 4 months, they had 183 appointments. But it isn't the numbers so much that I think about. It's the importance that I try to attach to the quality, independence, and competence to sit on the bench. When it comes to my judicial appointments, Morris, sometimes I can be a little controversial, I guess, or have that said about me. And I've had a couple of critics, on issues, but I think sometimes they miss the point. This is an area where I think the point sometimes is missed. Sort of the charges I've sought in a Republican court or a politically conservative court, or even, I guess, the most heinous of all would be an England court. I think that sophistry that what I've said so many times when I've had the privilege of speaking at many of these judicial investiture ceremonies, and I've said many times there and in other situations where I've had the occasion, and I think it's appropriate perhaps to mention it today, that I seek jurists on the Michigan bench who understand that as legislators, not judges, make the law, who believe that people should govern through their elected representatives, who comprehend that the burden of policy making belongs appropriately on the legislative, not the judicial branch, and who render decisions that are based on the text of the Constitution or the statute in question, rather than on somebody's personal or social agenda. In short, my objective has always been to look for intelligent, hardworking men and women with fidelity to the Constitution. Now, I think in Michigan we're blessed to have more than a few, and believe me, there are many who've been elected as well. I don't wish to suggest otherwise, but we're blessed to have more than a few in our judiciary who are making their mark, and I'm very proud of their achievements. And I think, as for the many members of the Supreme Court over here, like Gene Meyer is absolutely right. You are the very best. In a historical perspective, I think it's fair to compare our current Supreme Court with the greatest court in Michigan history, with the Big Four. And it was interesting in the brochure that I picked up as I walked in the room. Not only did we have the Big Four Writing and Research Project, there was a wonderful portrait of the Big Four dating back to the late 1800s. Justices Cooley, Campbell, Graves, and Christensen, when they served on the bench. And the similarity that I see, it's simply this, that they're similar because of the integrity of their judicial method, which is textual and restrained. And again, the aim should be to seek out the original meaning of the statute or the Constitution, be guided by the actual words that enacted into law, not what somebody intended, not what they hoped for, but what they say. I mean, this court's even starting out the difference between the and a, something that, at least in past years, have been somewhat elusive, and we're getting that, I think, correct now. And I think to be guided by the actual words, not by some vague penumbra or a social agenda of the tribunal, is the right way to go. And I certainly think, in terms of the history, that is consistent with the thinking of Hamilton, Madison, the framers of our Constitution. If you go back to that Constitutional Convention of 1787, which you see framers rejecting proposals to set up an active judiciary, at least on 3 occasions. It was in Marbury versus Madison later on that Chief Justice Marshall opined that the active judicial review would be, and by implication should be, rare. That was correct for a long time. Judicial review would be rare, and was for quite some time. And legendary Justices Holmes and Brandeis and others, they carried that banner of judicial restraint forward in future generations. But then you saw it start to change, and activism that moved into the judiciary at the federal and state level, and certainly reinforced at times by the professors in the academies. By the 60s, the late 60s, you had judicial usurpation of legislative authority on a somewhat more regular basis. I certainly saw that as an early legislator in the 70s, and then court-directed policy in a whole host of issues. And I think that in the latter part of this century that began to change. Certainly in the presidency of Ronald Reagan, there was a whole new debate touched off over the idea of judicial restraint. It got back into the public discourse, and you certainly had the controversy in those days of appointments, the elevation of Chief Justice Rehnquist, but more contentious with the Bork hearings in '87, and a whole sort of debate back and forth. And not to suggest this is by any means settled. I mean, one watches in the U.S. Senate this very day as the role of the Senate vis-a-vis the President in the appointment process, and really, which is a debate about philosophy that's going on. I mean, we're positive in terms of who's got what who's got what constitutional role, but cut through it, it's a debate about philosophies. Now, this is way too much of a brief recounting of history, much is left out, but I would certainly say that the debate over judicial restraint, and I believe the ideal of judicial restraint, is something that by no means going to be taken for granted. I don't think anyone does, but I believe it is absolutely vital to the health of our constitutional republic, and I think it's an ideal that ought to transcend partisan politics, but it needs to be defended, protected within and by our political process. And I also think it needs explaining. which is one of the reasons that the Michigan Supreme Court Historical Society is so important. And I think in Michigan's case, just preserving the memory of the Big Four and other great jurists is a worthy mission. I had the privilege recently to be down at the White House, and I was actually headed toward the restroom, the entry level. Well, there's this library room that you go into, and there's quite a collection of books, but right on the first shelf, and you can't help but see it when you sort of look that way, if you're not on such a direct route, to the door. You see this great book, the Cooley's Treatise on the Constitution is right there, 2-volume set. There they are, and I don't know how many times they've been looked at, but and by whom, but by golly, they're there. They're in the White House. They're on a prominent shelf, and they're available. Well, I think that's what this is important. I also, just in fairness, I think for the record, ought to say that the current Michigan Supreme Court has rendered decisions in some cases that do run counter to my preferences or wishes. I have to concede upon closer examination in most of those cases. There's a couple I still working on. It was hard to argue with their result. I mean, you can see how they got to their conclusion, and I will say that the legislature, to its credit, has gone back in a couple of instances now and rewritten the statute to sort of clarify. In other words, put it in words what they actually intended to have happen, and that's as it should be. And so the legislature has to do its job well in order to allow the judiciary to do its job well. And I think when they do, when everybody is robust in the exercise of their constitutional authorities, the system works rather well. I expect in my life I've had the opportunity to serve in 2 branches, don't expect to be serving in the 3rd, but I've always argued that the branch I'm in is, we ought to be robust in the exercise of authority, and I did that as a lawmaker. I tried to do that as a chief executive. Now, if the definition of judicial conservative, that gets troubling too for some folks, because there's a confusion about political conservative and judicial conservative. And I think the people that are sort of behaving on the court the way I've just suggested, I would prefer, that does come under the heading of a judicial conservative. That's what I look for. But I think a judicial conservative is not at all the same thing as a political conservative, because I think political conservatives tend to be advocates for certain public policy or social outcomes, and you have political liberals too, by the way. I mean, you can be just as much an advocate, but it is possible for somebody who's more liberal to be a judicial conservative in the sense that, I guess, thinking of the Tigers again, we're going to have an umpire over at this game today. Somebody's calling balls and strikes. The 2 teams are competing. They're playing the game. I mean, the Tigers, I guess, let's see, who we playing today? Is it Tampa Bay, so I don't know who would be the Democrats or Republicans. I won't try to label those. The Yankees, I'd say they would be the Democrats, and the Tigers would be the Republicans, hopelessly outnumbered, fighting back valiantly. But, this over here, got 2 Republican teams, I guess, over here today. But nonetheless, you're going to have the umpire there, that judge calling balls and strikes. But, in the 7th inning, you aren't going to find the rules changed, and the strike zone suddenly shrunk or expanded, and it won't be good enough if you almost touched home plate when you were trying to steal it, as opposed to actually touching it. I mean, I don't think the umpire will change those rules, and that's sort of somewhat the logic I'd like to see in the law. So, I just let me say that I thank you very much for inviting me to come here. I promise you all I will try not to delay anybody, so you pick the game on time. I want to thank the society. I think you've rendered a great service by raising the awareness of the judiciary and by continuing to talk of the history and the legacy of the court. I'm grateful to you. The people of Michigan should be forever in your debt. We're a better state because of the work you're doing. I'm delighted that in the new Hall of Justice there will be a little space for the society, and I'm also pleased. One of the things that Chief Justice Betty Weaver did, so it was very important in the design of the Hall of Justice, is Betty insisted on an interpretive center, an education function for the court, so that the expectation that more visitors will come there, and there will be a way in which they will be explained. And I fear that for some students coming there, that may be the single best explanation they get of the judicial branch of government throughout the course of their education. That's another topic for another day and another speech, but I thank the court for doing that, and I, like all of you, await October 8th with great anticipation. Thank you for this honor. Enjoy the game.
There's not much left. I want to thank you all for coming today. We had a nice crowd, nice turnout. Honor the governor. Thank you for sharing this day with us. We hope to see you all this time next year. Now, the next statement is not subject to interpretation, judicial or otherwise. We're adjourned.